Thank you, everyone. Must say it's a stellar panel. I think the big names from the industry are already here, and we have been talking about the digital innovation, and so many things. So I partly discussed about the theme thriving in digital some time back when I was talking in the welcome note. So it's not just about digital adoption, but evolution. And I have a few common but few specific questions as well. And let me start with you only, Mr. Mehta. I have been talking to you since long time. You have been veteran specifically in the PSU banks and now heading, the IBA as well. So I'm sure you interact with so many banks and kind of leading the whole bandwagon of the changes. So after all the banks have adopted certain level of digital, my question to you, sir, how do you review the digital adoption of the PSU banks now?
Thank you, Amol. And as an industry body like an IBA, we have a focus on digitalization and improving the customer experience. And talking in terms of public sector bank, I think most of us know because they are having the major market share in the entire banking industry. So they started with the computerization, and now the stage has come that every bank is now on a CBS platform with the alternative delivery channels like ATMs, internet banking. Almost every bank has a mobile banking. And now these channels are getting improved every day. They are working how to integrate these channels for the user experiences. Some of the banks like SBI has come up with a where more than just a payment and other informations are there. Other banks are also working on that pattern. So as regards adoption of digitalization, I think the banking system as a whole and public sector banks in particular have really done a great job into the payment space. Now, I think nobody has to go to a bank for making a payment requirement. They can do it through the convenience of their mobile. They can do it through the convenience of their laptop, or maybe through a kiosk or a self-service zone kiosk. So these options are available, and that digitization has really helped the customers, especially in payment space. Now it's a time for digitalization of the lending space. Some of the banking system, some of the banks have already taken a lead. They have started working on such products where mortgages are not required or directly they can do so. Personal loan space where very minimal documentation and security creations are required. So some of the banks have already created a digital platform, a digital model where the customer can go and take the personal loans. Yes, I subscribe to the views of Mr. Rajesh from IBA Innovation. He was talking about digitalization for the end user, the last mile, like farmers and downtown. And that is a way forward, and RBI governor has already announced, and he has already mentioned that one of the public sector bank is already partnering there and doing some of the state. Once the proof of concept is established, it can be replicated in the other banks also. So I think digitalization is not it's not an option. Everybody has to move forward for creating efficiency, transparency, and customer convenience. And public sector banks are very fast adopting it. So I must appreciate that, and I expect that the digital space will quickly, this lending space will quickly get digitalized in times to come.
Sure, I think meaningful thoughts, sir. Mr. Kamakodi, sir, I will come to you. But I think quite meaningful thoughts here, because initially people thought public sector banks may not go as aggressive as they should, specifically in digital adoption. But I think that's quite meaningful one. Mr. Kamakodi, I will take your views now in terms of how has been the digital adoption experience for your bank.
Thank you, Amol. Thank you, fellow panelists. See, it's like just adding to what Mehta Saab told, like say the starting from the computerization of the operations. First, maybe like say if we take that early 90s as the period when the basic computerization started for all banks. It was the new generation banks, they started directly with the computerization. So the first 10 years was for all the banks, both the public sector and the private sector at that point of time, to migrate from the, to migrate the operations and the like say maintenance of the ledgers from paper mode to the technology mode. After that, with the arrival of internet in the early 2000s, slowly the other options of ATM networks and the channels like digital channels like internet banking and mobile banking started. We can conveniently say between like say 2000 to 2010, that was the era when all other digital channels started. In fact, after the currently the first phase, like say the first phase was conversion from paper to digital. The second one was converting the operations. Basically, people moved to the digital channels and do it yourself banking. Currently, even for banks like us, in fact, thanks to COVID, almost 97-98 percentage of the transactions of customers have migrated to non-branch channel, including the digital channels. So it could be like internet banking, mobile banking, or ATM network, or BNA, the currency recyclers and all. So the entire operations has now migrated to the like say the do-it-yourself, particularly through the digital channels. Parallelly, as sir said, the like say looking into the data, the analytics driven operations, and then like how to use the data for making the credit analysis, that part of next level digitization is already underway. So the almost now all the banks have got into that mode. Maybe like some element of human interface in terms of the final approval is there. Like now the division is bulk of the retail lending has become now almost 100 percentage digital decision making through the arrival of your including the credit bureau scores to other operating parameters and all. Now the next phase will be to the business banking, where even though the balance sheet analysis and all have been parameterized, there are still some amount of software aspects which are captured through other means. That process of digital decision making is underway. Maybe hardly it is going to be a couple of years when you may not be having 100 percentage of that. At least even 95-98 percentage of the decision making will be becoming digital on that front. But the next part, what is going to be the like say monitoring of accounts. So many data which particularly on the business banking side, which you can do it at the back end, but still you will need some amount where you have to go and physically have touch with the like say business banking per se. That is where the focus of the branches are going to be in the near future. Till that also get completely digitized. That is where we are, the almost entire banking industry per se.
Oh, sure, it's quite meaningful. It's not just about adoption, but what is the next that you're going to do? I think you also informed us about it, and I think retail has been very significant pickup. We have, in fact, interestingly, most of the banks have developed their own algorithms to create the alternative data scorings, and they're not just relying on CIBIL and any other credit scoring authorities. Thank you so much for those meaningful thoughts. Now, after listening to IBA and City Union Bank, let me move my focus to the youngest banks, which started with the digital vision itself. And Rajivji, I will come to you first. It's almost 5 years for the small finance banks came into the picture, and it started with a digital idea itself. These banks are born digital. So you already started a lot of digital activities with your launch itself. Now you are in what stage of digital? From henceforth, will you be doing everything digital? Like we'll have robotic automated procession at your branch or something like that, and all the robots will do everything, or and no human interaction will be there? How's it?
Thank you, Amol. It's so nice that we have reached an era where we have started believing in digital, using digital, and now the question is evolving how more we can do in it. When we started a bank 5 years back, to the point being made earlier, we used to have a discussion of what is digital. Ultimately, all data was 0-1 inside computer systems, and you can argue it is digital. You can argue retail internet banking, which existed in those days, is digital. So, and it's a very fine definition, and it's a continuum. It's not just one unique definition. And I'm so glad that pretty much we started at least visualizing digital a bit differently than what we used to visualize in the previous decade of 2000 to 2010. Clearly, the smartphone revolution, if I were to just say, in a very simplistic way, anything which pretty much sees mobile first as a way of doing things, be it a customer experience, be it the way the employees work with the customers, largely comes in the framework of being digital. And that's where the real benefit starts coming in. That's where the challenges start coming in. As Amol, as you said, we had the benefit of launching in an era where Aadhaar, eKYC, the basic Aadhaar framework, the payments came in much later, UPI came in much later. But fundamentally, the Aadhaar framework was already there. We are an institution which caters to millions of customers. We touch them every month. And for us to do small value transactions at large scale in a profitable manner, there's always a challenge. And so basically, when you simplify the digital from a customer perspective, it becomes if you are digital, if you are paperless, and it was discussed in the last presentation by Rajesh. You are digital if you can do an interaction with the customer at their doorstep. You are digital if you can do it instantaneous for the customer. You are digital if you can do it at any time of the day and night for the customer. And if you put those frameworks in, then you start thinking about imagining what a truly a digital framework can be. As we discussed in the last session, digital unfortunately is not always customer led, and that's an acceptable position to have. Sometimes we imagine do it yourself is the only way of doing business, and we have to be quite okay in accepting the fact that even if it's assisted digital, it is digital, and the customers will go to a do-it-yourself mode over a point of time. But the experience a customer can be given by an assisted mode using digital is far superior than an experience, as it was talked about, a Kisan credit card, which is unfortunately still having a lot of paper, and therefore the moment you introduce paper, you introduce complicated processes and tax and everything else. So I'm very comfortable in saying we pretty much launched the bank, and I tell to people that even the first account that was opened in our bank was opened using eKYC in an API-based workflow, and was not opened through a backend using the core banking screens. And we were lucky because those solutions existed, and we were able to build the digital solution on day one. What are the difficulties, that once the organization matures, what are the challenges or difficulties that come in? There are namely two forms of difficulties that come in, and there will be more which will come in the future. There are obviously other issues also. The first is working in digital format is easy. Maintaining digital and maintaining the customer experience and maintaining and making sure everything works on an everyday basis is difficult. As was talked about, if a workflow is broken, if a step is broken, pretty much you get stuck with it. Now, that is a challenge. It could be broken because nobody visualized the scenario, or the technology just does not work. It is intermittent, what people call in the language, it's fluctuation. There are fluctuations, 24/7. So, and then there are employee experiences. Every employee uses digital differently. Every customer uses digital differently. There are different smartphones. There are different solutions. There are upgrades which keep on happening. OSs get upgraded all the time. So once you're in a digital world, it's easy for everyone to say, oh, we are a digital bank. But a digital bank is someone who can maintain the consistency of the experience from morning to evening with a near perfect uptime. That is what I've seen in tomorrow's world. That will be one of the biggest differentiators, that everybody offers mobile banking, but what kind of consistent experience that you can give, what kind of a seamless experience, how fast your screens load up, how do they move from various stages to various stages, and that becomes a huge USP for a bank if you can actually deliver a consistent experience. The second challenge, and just to keep it brief, and I'm sure we'll come back in the later part of the conversation, is about the reinvention of the digital technologies. What was a modern technology 5 years back is no longer as modern. The underlying infrastructure, the underlying softwares, the underlying services, the underlying enterprise service bus, microservices, there are so many things which keep on improving. And once you go on a certain direction, it's very easy to become a legacy software, a legacy technology, and getting stuck with legacy. And how do you keep on upgrading yourself, reinventing yourself in a digital world is another big direction that all institutions have to think and work towards.
Quite realistic and meaningful views, Rajivji. In fact, the digital part of maintaining it is really, really relevant. Uh, I think we'll take the same question to you, Venkatji, and try to learn from you, because if you look at the structure of payment banks, many companies, many banks could not even launch their products because of perhaps they did not find it sustainable and they surrendered their licenses. But for IPPB, it's a different story because India's largest institution post is behind you. And I think you have been doing a lot of things there, including the life certificate for the people. But considering all this digital evolution now, what is the niche that the payment banks like you are finding so that you will remain sustainable and consistent in your offerings?
Thank you, Amol. First of all, I would like to add to the digital adoption piece, that question which you raised. I think if any one area which benefited because of digital is the financial inclusion. The problem of financial inclusion that country has been facing, 5-6 years back, has been successfully solved. At least I could say that the first round of financial inclusion has been won by the banks in terms of covering large-scale customers by opening their bank accounts in a completely digitally enabled process in an assisted or a near digital mode. So having said that, I think the question about the future of payment banks and how payments bank can become more utility oriented, especially from the point of view of financial inclusion. You need to understand that in order to promote financial inclusion, you require both physical and as well as digital reach. And that's what defined the success in the initial round. So taking a cue from that, it's all about building the rails for financial inclusion. You have the rails, it's more about adding more and more services. I think the business model of a payment bank is very, very close to a telecom business, because in telecom also it's all about how many services that you can add, value-added services. I'm sure I don't want to take away from what Airtel can offer about, but it's very close to that business model. So in terms of businesses, if you talk about the services that we can add is what going to define, and that services may differ from payment bank to payment bank. And we feel that we are unique in that prospect because of being in the government setup. So it could be a mix of where you offer citizen-centric services plus other financial services. So as a part of that, we're adding the basic banking services, including collaborating with some of the other financial institutions. Because today, with the help of digital, you no more require exclusive physical reach. So which is like a cloud distribution network, if I call. So I can work for any institution in the last mile. So that way, it's more about adding services and getting more revenue, average revenue per user. So that's the business model for payment banks in the future going to be.
Quite meaningful, average revenue per user. I think a very interesting one. So Ganesh, let me come to you. You heard about the digital evolution and how the banks specifically are looking at digital. So my question to you, you must be talking to a lot of financial institutions in terms of digital. One, in what stage are the banks, financial institutions when it comes to digital adoption, and what are the still major challenges do you see they are facing in terms of adopting or embracing digital?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me. You could say from my dress that I'm not a banker like all of them. But I got to start with this. I moved in 1990 to US to study. And I started my banking in a US banking institution. At that time, the US banks looked as if they were 20 years ahead of us, right? So if you had banked in India and one there. This time I actually went to drop my daughter to college. And I went to a US bank to get her account open. I can absolutely say that they are 20 years behind us in terms of their digitization. And this is actually a credit to all of you in this room and the leaders here. It's an unbelievable experience when you see Indian banking today versus US banking today. I can't get a credit card online right now in US, right? That's how it is, that's fair. I also happened to run Dell's e-business way back in 2000. So that is when you could order computers online, which was a novel idea at that time. And if you look at what we did, you will have a web page, you can order the computer, and then we'll have somebody enter it on into our system manually, right? So we had people basically take the order, enter it online, and then we'll take that order from this ordering system and we'll enter into a factory system in one more time. And then in the whole process, if the computer gets delayed, we'll get calls into our call center. That was the stage of digitization we started with. But when I look at banks today, I think you're a little bit ahead of that. But we came up with this concept called frictionless. How many of the customer requests went from their digital front end all the way to the fulfillment of the service without no touch point in between? And we were able to achieve 90% frictionless from a computer getting ordered to getting delivered without no human intervention in between. So the order went from the digital system to the factory. It went from the factory to you on time, fully communicating to you where the system is so that you never had to call or you never have to wonder where it is. I will draw the parallel to a Forex card I recently applied in a bank. It's a bank. It was a great experience. I could go online, order the Forex card, fantastic. But for me to know where the Forex card is, when is it coming, that was not communicated to me. So I had to make a phone call, say, when is it coming? I have to take a flight. And after the Forex card came, I tried to test it. It wasn't getting activated. So I had to call them and say, how do you activate it? So you have to activate using a phone call. And then to recharge, I have to call. So there is 3 touch points for a digital transaction, right? I'm sure it's very expensive now. It has become expensive by then, right? There are 3 phone calls. The margins have eroded. So I think the bank's next evolution in the digital journey is to how to make these requests frictionless end to end. And I think that will be the next evolution of digital banking in India, in my view.
Okay. I think quite realistic and meaningful thoughts from all the panelists, and that encouraged me to ask a very specific questions to all of them, specifically about now thriving in digital, because everyone has its own theory of digital. So Mehta sir, I will come to you, and we have seen a great revolution of digitalization in the banking industry. So with this, now it's not about digital transformation, but it's about how to constantly keep up with the speed of digital transformation, because by the time you adopt one software and you start implementing and executing it, another version is ready of the same software, right? And then you have to again train the banks or the employees. So how are you crafting? How should banks craft the strategies to update and upgrade, specifically in the constantly evolutionary world?
Yes, Amol, I would like to highlight few very important aspects of banking. And as very rightly said in the opening of Mr. Rajesh talked about it, that when it comes to data privacy, a banking system is the one whom they trust people and sharing data beside their employer and all that. So banking is basically a business of trust. And when it is a business of trust, the credibility need to be maintained. In the speed of innovation, somehow we have to keep a proper balance between maintaining the credibility of the institution by keeping the data privacy. And there comes the major roles of fintechs and besides providing technical solution, how do we provide that confidence to the users of the technology that the data that sharing with the bank are protected, will not be misused. That is one aspect of it. And then how do we prevent cybersecurity threats and frauds? That becomes a very important aspect of it, because adopting new innovations every day is one aspect of it. But in the process, if we lose the credibility of the banking system, and which is the essence, and I must compliment the regulator, Indian, it's like RBI. Fortunately, despite crisis, our regulator and the government has come forward. They did not allow any of the bank to fail. Even if when bank was in a problem, they told some bigger brother to take care of it. The banks were merged. The other management came, and I don't want to quote the names, but you know that there have been crises and which were handled very nicely by the regulator. So, adoption of technology with creating awareness among the users about risk involved in technology, the phishing, that say how people are, and every day you listen stories about how the people were duped by coming that you just pay your electricity bill, otherwise your electricity will be disconnected today, and they provide a link, and in the process, instead of restoring the electricity, you lose your account. So these type of things, if we are not able to go simultaneously with the technology adoption, this may create a trust deficit with the use of the digital technology by the end user. And the keeping customers and the end users in mind, I think these things have to go in hand. So the next level of technology is progressing, but now the next level of support that is needed from the banking system for creating and continuing the confidence of the end user is coming out with solution which provides them awareness, which provides them confidence of data protection and the confidence for data security and preventing them from defrauded by the fraudster. Now, one important decision that has been taken by RBI and the government together, Finance Minister announced it, and IB has closely worked with both the institution and 22 banks, including public sector, private sector, as well as a small finance bank, have now established the digital banking unit. The digital banking unit, because of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, so on the 16th of October, this was launched in the country, and now this will be expanded. The basic objective is to not only create awareness, so the basic objective is to create awareness, onboard those customers, like yes, younger generation. We talk in cities, yes, people are digitalized. But what about the, as Mr. Rajesh rightly said, what about the farmers? What about the end users? Those who are not literate enough to understand everything just by menu. They have to be handhold. So who will handhold them? And if the person handholding turns out to be a fraudster, what will happen to their confidence in the banking system? So then these digital banking units will facilitate them. So you need a speed, but speed needs a brakes also and the checks also, so that the next level of digitalization do embed these aspects for retaining the customer conscience. This is the essence of the banking industry.
Sure. I think noted your points, really, really important points. I must say, cybersecurity, data frauds, I think are very, very important. Mr. Kamakodi, I would like to take your views in terms of what will, because you said some time back, obviously entire operations have also shifted to digital. A lot of things are happening on digital. So going ahead, because it's going to be a digital journey. So what will make you thrive? What will make you sustain? Specifically in the digital world, because the generation is changing, millennials have different demands from the Gen Z, and every customer is different. So what will make you thrive?
See, always, be it a physical mode or be it a digital mode, as long as any organization, it is able to make its stakeholder feel that they are getting a value, they will strive, they will thrive. So every organization, be it a bank or be it a telecom organization or any institution, the most important focus or priority or the objective of every organization will be to continuously create value. That value, being a bank is basically nothing but in the business of getting your deposits and also lending it to the people. So we have to thrive, earlier, going forward, the gap between, earlier there used to be saying that bigger banks and smaller banks, they will have, somebody will have better advantage or disadvantages and all. All these things have now almost faded away. Be it a small bank or be it a big bank, continuously we have to show to our stakeholders, be it depositors or be it borrowers or be it shareholders, the benchmarks will be clearly defined by the competition. We have to continuously strive to ensure that we are also at par with the best. Every institution has to be there won't be any second ranker. Everybody has to be a first ranker in that journey. That will determine the way with which the industry is evolving moving forward. As Mr. Ganesh said, say even in the developed country like US, where the things have stagnated and things have not moved, and the things, since our banking system has moved pretty faster in the last couple of decades, this pace has to be continuously kept in such a way that the entire industry continuously innovate to be the best and give the best value to the customers. That will make every organization to thrive and move forward.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kamakodi sir, for those thoughts. Rajeev sir, most of the PSU banks or the private banks have a large number of partnerships with the fintechs. But when it comes to small finance banks or the payment banks, fintechs are almost as big as the small finance banks. So one, they're competing with you directly, not only in terms of just customer acquisition, but disbursing loans very quickly and seamlessly, and maybe also in real time sometimes. So how are you, or specifically small finance banks, are going to thrive, sustain, while the competition is huge, specifically from the fintechs?
No, I think it's relatively simple for us. We can't do everything ourselves. There are so many inherent partnerships that we have, in a digital framework that we have, that we use even in today's context. I think more than the size of partners that we work with, like we take core banking from FIS, and FIS is a global technology partner and a phenomenally large partner than even a small finance bank like ours. What matters more than the size, whether equal or smaller or bigger, is it a kind of a mutually beneficial solution? Are you trying to add value to the customer in your leg of the relationship with the customer, or are you trying to do virtually the same thing and trying to at the expense of the other partner? So when we deal with technology partners helping us provide UPI solutions, what we call their technology service providers, and we are absolutely delighted to work with them because they bring value to the chain. So I think what we look for, and I would, at Fincare Small Finance Bank is partnerships which add a unique element of value in their part of the value chain, while the bank can do its part in terms of a lending or a deposit account relationship. And as long as there is meaningful addition and complementary addition to the value addition, I think any partnership is possible and sustainable for the long term. A partner who's working on a profitable principle is helpful for sustainability, because somebody who's losing money, then it becomes a challenge on terms of sustainability, in terms of what is their own proper value proposition in the whole thing. So I think two successful partners, profitable partners, value adding in different parts of the chain, are clearly the seeds of a long term success for both the institutions.
Sure. Notable points. Most of the fintechs, in fact, started this BNPL, and now the RBI is also going really high on digital lending part. I think that's one of the interesting model of the collaboration. But just quickly, how do you see the BNPL model is shaping up specifically? Because that kind of gave a big fillip to the banks and the fintechs as well.
Sure. The most convenient, simplest product that we can do in a digital format is actually personal loans. And then you can take the personal loan to any format, be it a card format or buy now, pay later. It's a variant of personal loans, and clearly they add a lot of value to the customers. At least from our perspective, what we try and look for is, what kind of loans are being done. What is the expected credit losses from that portfolio? What are the potential, customer issues, be it collection challenges, be it customer service issues that can come from there? Are they in any form trying to build a certain degree of a risk or an enterprise risk where customers will be able to service the loans for a short period of time but may not be able to sustain it over a point of time? So I think all lending formats have a future. There is no universal rule which says that these are good or these are not good. Personal loans will 100% exist. Personal loans delivered through a plastic form will 100% exist. Secured loans of any kind, be it auto loans, mortgage loans, consumer durables loans, will all exist. I think what will drive the success or sustainability of a product will be: is it based on good risk principles? Is it based on good customer service principles? Is customer protection embedded inside the product? Are collection practices fair? And if those principles are there on the table, then any form of digital lending will have a very bright future. And that's the way we see it. The regulator obviously has concerns because there are offshoots of BNPL of all kinds. There are, I'm sure, people who do it fabulously well, but probably people who don't, who are not so focused on the customer protection principles, and therefore it leads to issues and brings a negative branding to the whole industry. But I think all kinds of loans will exist. Only thing is, over a point of time, they'll become more customer-centric and more risk-centric and more, as a model, profit-centric. And then the future of those products will be infinitely long.
Yeah. Mehta sir, do you want to quickly add here? Because digital lending has become one of the prominent thing for the banks and the fintechs. So what do you think that, I mean, how this model will become sustainable and thrive in the whole digital world?
You know, digitalization of lending space will provide a lot of convenience to the borrowers. And obviously, we have seen the benefit of digitalization in railway reservation, in airline bookings, and all that. And same thing will happen in banking industry. Now, creation of a digital lending platforms requires three major enablers. One is database for underwriting. So there the government has already provided facilitation in the terms of like now some of the platforms like 59minutes.com or there are certain banking system has been allowed access to the GST data, the income tax data, as well as they have access to their own accounts of a banking system. The account aggregator framework will also facilitate the availability of the information in the public domain. So the data about the customer, their transaction behavior, their tax behavior, their GST and their sales, that can be captured through these platforms. Now, another thing is at the time of underwriting, then banks are developing their algorithm based and using the artificial intelligence. They have the transaction data of the customer. So they can have the predefined limits, and now banks are offering pre-approved loans based on this data. So now that is underwriting that can happen with this database, for which the banks have to use technology. Right. And the third thing is enabler in terms of documentation. Like how do you give a loan by creation of a security? So the government has mandated the NESL, that is National NESL, which is a repository of the documents where the documents can be digitally signed and can be reposed. So, some of the state governments, like 26 state governments have already permitted e-stamping also. Like now we have, as an IBA, we have given prescription that the guarantees can be obtained end-to-end in a digital mode. Right. Even e-stamping can happen. So once this documentation also happen, then directly account can be credited to the account. So to the extent of monitoring. Now this next level will be monitoring of these accounts and developing the collection method to be digitally. So to end have a digitalization from onboarding of the customer to the closure of the account, the entire process digitized, then we can say yes, it has created a convenience for all the stakeholders.
Yeah, sure. Noted your point, sir. So Venkat ji, आपके पास आऊँगा मैं again, and I will try to learn. But before that, I quickly, I took a take on digital lending is because most of the fintechs are operating in this space. RBI has also gone against a lot of BNPL activities. And, surprisingly, I have seen lots of fintechs telling me that we look at data far more aggressively. And according to them, in fact, the Gen Zs and millennials are using BNPL and taking loan even to go on a date or do a marriage shopping, something like this. So when we speak about the underwriting, then the question comes to my mind is, आपने डेट पे जाने के लिए लोन लिया है, लेकिन ब्रेकअप होने के बाद फिर लोन पे कौन करेगा? That's the question specifically, I think, happening with the digital lending side. So quite interesting thoughts, and good that you highlighted the underwriting and data part really well. So Venkat ji, now my question to you, when we speak specifically about the thriving in the world of digital, what is your strategy to make, I won't say IPPB thrive, I'm sure it will thrive, but to thrive in a way that it will be really sustainable and a consistent model, because it has been a challenging time for other payment banks, and IPPB is also doing lots of different things. But on the other side, like I said, the ecosystem has also evolved, and they are also offering similar products. They are also partnering with a lot of other players. So what is going to be your strategy to thrive in the digital world going ahead, Venkatji?
Okay. So, one thing that key takeaway that, digital has made us learn is that there is no way we can thrive without collaboration. I think collaboration is the key, and digital has brought us together, be it UPI, where it's not only banks and networks, but, the third party players like big tech companies have come forward and, try to create a platform. So from that standpoint, definitely digital calls for collaboration of more and more players. But the fundamental business model will not undergo any change, because the fundamental principles continue to remain same. As long as in any business you are able to innovate, do value creation, bring in process efficiency, operational efficiency, and take care of the customer, I think these principles must be adhered to without any compromise at any given point in time. So as long as these things are taken care of, it's more about leveraging digital as an enabler in creating what is required for delivering these three, fundamental principles. Another area where I would like to definitely harp upon, Mehta sir clearly pointed out about the perils of the digital technology. I mean, today, the kind of issues that banks are grappling with, probably we're not doing enough when it comes to securing the customer interest, especially in terms of the digital frauds that are happening. Every one of us have invested heavily in platforms like UPI, but at the end of the day, probably we've not done enough in terms of safeguarding the customer money. Suppose if a customer comes to know that some money got debited from his account without his consent, today probably it takes for him hours, maybe few days, to actually give the information back to the source, where the money has gone. Why can't we use, technology? Why can't, technology be used today? You have best-in-class technology to take care of these problems, and that's where probably all the institutions will have to come together in safeguarding this. And I'm sure we should be able to come up with solutions in fine-tuning our FRM modules, and more importantly, data sharing, and more importantly, real-time sharing of the information, where we can probably curb these kind of practices. Unfortunately, today, the fraudsters are using different mechanisms, and they're using technology much more than we all can use.
Sure, Venkatji, nice thoughts. I think that's why most of the global banks have started using something called ethical hacking. In fact, most of the banks have also started doing that. So Ganeshji, let me come to you. Maybe I completely echo with your US example, because now friends of mine whom I studied 7-8 years back for a small course in South Korea now asks, friends from Brazil and Indonesia to ask me, in fact, asking me to write about UPI, because they want to make aware their generation and their, people. In fact, I wrote a couple of articles for them on how GST is, shaping up India in terms of taxation and UPI story here. So thanks for adding that point there, Ganesh. But now going ahead, when you heard the bankers, they're talking and going very aggressive on the digital side, how do you see the future of digital specifically for banks? Because you must be interacting with a lot of banks. So going ahead, what kind of changes do you see over the maybe next 2 to 3 years? And what kind of solutions do you see banks are going to adopt?
Yeah, my request to all of you is make telecom a partner in your digital journey. Today, you are basically letting telecom guys deal with your admin and procurement. My sincere request to all of the leaders in this room is challenge us to create the digital journeys you want to create for your customers. When 5G is in everybody's hand, which will be in 3 to 5 years, you will have 1 gigabit of speed in every phone. I don't want that to be used for downloading movies faster. We could actually create, today we are all in, using video conference in 2D. In 5 years, we will all beam ourselves. An end-to-end digital bank in a remote location where everything is connected, where a loan manager or a particular portfolio manager can beam themselves to any part of the country and provide the same experience they would get when they walk into your flagship branch. That we can make it possible with all the security you need. We will have edge compute in 120 centers where your video analytics can be processed much, much more faster than what is today. We can reimagine banking security with 5G the way no other technology could have done. My only sincere request as you guys think about is, don't think telecom as a procurement agenda. Please bring telecom into your innovation agenda. Challenge us to create these solutions for you. And we would love to work with you. I'm really sorry to say that in 5G, if you look at M&D, if I look at any other vertical, they are much ahead of challenging us to create solutions. I have spoken to every BFSI, say, look, we've got this 5G, we've got this spectrum, please do something with us. We haven't seen anybody come forward and say, we would love to do it. And we would love to invest, we would love to co-create. Please make us your partner in innovation, not a procurement agenda.
Sure, Ganesh, noted your points. I think the time is up, but before I wrap up, maybe one quick question, maybe you can answer in hardly 10 to 15 seconds in 1 or 2 words. And Ganesh, I will start with you. How do you see the whole BFSI ecosystem, or maybe specifically banks, over the next 2 to 3 years? Because everybody is going really, really high on digital. Do you think that it will be a branchless banking? Do you think everything will happen on smartphone? How do you see in next 2 to 3 years?
I think in 3 to 5 years, banking will be extremely high touch using digital, where everybody will beam themselves and every order will be frictionless. That would be the vision for us.
Sure. Kamakodi, sir.
Along with the digital thing, you also need the other ecosystem like legal system and all to get in tune with what is required in the digital and all. Particularly, everybody is talking about digital lending, but when you have more small ticket lending, if there is problem in recovery, how those things are going to get solved is something which also need to be parallelly looked into.
Sure. Mehta sir.
I foresee to be India to be number one in ease of doing banking in the world.
Wow, quite interesting. Thank you, sir. Rajeev sir.
At a very simplistic level, I think the next big revolution in the next 2 years will be video banking. And then obviously it will take off in multiple directions after that.
Sure. Venkatji.
So I think you'll see a lot of new players, non-banks, taking the front end away from banks. OTT in banking.
Sorry?
OTT in banking. You know, what
OTT
happened to
in
OTT to data?
Okay. आपने डाकिया को तो पहले ही बैंकर बना दी है. अभी OTT बना देंगे. Great. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing meaningful thoughts here. The time is up, I guess. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to us very, very patiently. I wish I could have taken some questions, but the time is up. But again, thank you so much for being part of ETBFSI Convergence. Thank you so much for sharing your insights here.